Good morning. I'd like to start by making sure we first give another round of applause to the Tiger Squadron for that great flyover. Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. For those of you who hadn't had the chance to meet, my name is John Highbush, and I'm the Executive Director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. Before we begin our formal program this morning, I'd like to recognize some special guests that we have with us today. We're pleased to have with us Michael Reagan from the Reagan family. Michael, if you'd stand. Our new Congressman Steve Knight and his wife Lily. The commanding officer of Naval Base Ventura County, Captain Lawrence Vasquez, and his wife Nancy. Assemblyman Scott Wilk. Our former congressman and a terrific guy, Elton Gallagher, and his wife Janice. From the city of Simi Valley, council members Keith Mashburn and Mike Judge. And finally, from the Simi Valley Unified School District board member Debbie Sandlin. I'd like to start by giving a special thank you to all the men and women here today from Marine Corps Base at Camp Pendleton who have helped us with today's celebration. This is the Reagan Library's 11th year working in conjunction with Camp Pendleton to pay tribute to President Reagan on his birthday, and we are honored to have the support of our fighting men and women from such a vital military installation. On behalf of everyone here, and I am sure all Americans, thank you for your service. And now for today's program in honor of the 104th birthday of Ronald Wilson Reagan. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the March on the Colors, the playing of our national anthem, and the invocation by Chaplain Wayne McCrae, Captain, United States Navy.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please bow your heads with me in prayer? Lord God in heaven, we gather here this morning to acknowledge the life, beliefs, ideals, and contributions of President Ronald Reagan, and to thank you for sharing him with us as a nation when we needed a strong leader to guide us. You instilled in him values and character that drew people to him, that shaped his views of us as Americans and on these states as United States. The beliefs and ideals he bore, founded in a firm faith in you, caused him to strive to remove barriers born of bigotry and discrimination, to believe in the freedom and dignity of each of us, and to count on the will and moral courage of free men and women. These values born of faith extended to our American ideals and to his optimistic view of the American people. Father, this servant of yours never ceased to challenge us as a nation to do our best, to believe in ourselves and our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together, with your help, that we could and would resolve the problems that confronted our nation. In memory of his life of service and his belief in the will and compassion of the American people, we ask, Father, that you would move within each of us here today to continue to carry out the legacy of President Reagan. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commanding General of Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, Brigadier General Edward Banta.
Thank you, Mr. Highbush. Good morning, everyone. Before I go any further, I just want to thank the chaplain. Well done with ordering up such a beautiful day today. Able to see the Tiger squadrons fly over without looking through the roof of a tent. So well done, thank you. Vice Admiral Miller, distinguished guests, Marines, sailors, fellow citizens, everybody who came out today, good morning. It's truly a privilege for my wife Molly and I to be here today as we honor the birthday of our 40th president. And on behalf of all the Marines and sailors of Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton and Marine Corps Installations West, thank you for allowing us to do our part, honoring one of our great American heroes. As was mentioned, and as you can see, we are really fortunate today to have some of your Marines present supporting the ceremony. And while most of these Marines and sailors who stand here before you today are too young to remember President Reagan, they do know what he did for our nation, our military, and our Marine Corps. And I know that because in preparing my remarks today, I asked several of the young Marines who work on my command deck what President Reagan meant to them. And here's a sampling of what I heard. This is from a sergeant. President Reagan rebuilt the face of the nation at a difficult time, with impacts to the economy and military that can still be felt today. This is from a corporal. President Reagan said, "Some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marines don't have that problem." And this one's my favorite. And this is from a young Lance Corporal who told me that back in 1984, in May of 1984, President Reagan received a letter from Headquarters Marine Corps asking him to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. I had to admit that that was news to me. I had not heard of that before. So I asked my staff to do a little bit of digging, and they came back and confirmed that not only did President Reagan receive a letter complete with a postage-paid response card for a free Semper Fi bumper sticker, but he also wrote back to our 28th Commandant, General P.X. Kelly, and I'd like to share with you a portion of that letter this morning. Dear General Kelly, I regret that I must decline the attached invitation to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. As proud as I am of the inference concerning my physical fitness, it might be better to continue as the Commander-in-Chief. Besides, at the present time, it would be rather difficult to spend 10 weeks at Parris Island. The recruiter notes that had I joined 6 months ago, I would have a whole new life now. There's no doubt about that. As much as the other political party would appreciate the notion Nancy is happy with the house, and I am totally satisfied with my job. As for the immediate future, I have the kind of tenacity the Corps is famous for, and my resolve to stay here for the next 4 years. Would you consider a deferment until 1989? On a more serious note, PX, I'm sure my invitation came as the result of a Lance Corporal's overactive imagination. Nevertheless, please let him know that he honored me in believing that I have what it takes to become a United States Marine. Semper Fidelis, Ronald Reagan. So personally, I think that's a pretty good endorsement on the President's legacy, which is exactly why we are honored to be here today, to ensure his legacy lives on, and that his contributions not only to our nation, but to the defense of our nation are never forgotten. And while these Marines may look into the history books or the internet to study our leader, I had the privilege of serving under President Reagan when I was commissioned back in 1986. Back then we were in the process of rebuilding our nation's military, of repairing our services that had been plagued by low morale, low pay, and outdated equipment. And through his leadership, President Reagan brought pride back to our military, believing that military service in the armed forces of the United States is a profound form of service to all humankind. And that liberty, freedom, and fairness of things are things worth fighting for, things worth devoting our lives for. He believed in a strong military, and he backed up that belief with resources, expanding our military budget by 43% over what we spent at the height of the Vietnam War. For the Marine Corps, that meant an additional 11,000 Marines, as well as new weapons and new equipment. And I saw this firsthand as we recruited young Americans who were proud to wear the cloth of their nation and outfitted them with weapons and equipment to replace the Vietnam and, in some cases, Korean War era gear that we'd made do with for decades. And so what I saw was literally a new dawn of military power and capability. And we see that today reflected in the strength of our services, and you hear about it in the victories in far-off places like Fallujah, Ramadi, and Helmand Province. As Marines, we always have the utmost allegiance to and respect for our Commander-in-Chief, and we always knew that President Reagan understood and appreciated our service. It was during a speech to Marine recruits at Parris Island in 1986 when the President stated that America's future will be big and strong, generous, and full of hope because of the many men and women who serve her today. And because of the support we received from our Commander-in-Chief, I'm proud to report that your Marine Corps continues to be ready to face the challenges ahead of us, ready to ensure that your legacy of an America that stands up for liberty, freedom, and fairness continues on. And in closing, a simple message from the nation and your Marines. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Semper Fidelis. God bless America.
Thank you, General Banta, and certainly thank you for your service to our country. Our mission here at the Reagan Foundation is to preserve and promote Ronald Reagan's legacy and principles. Now, we do that through educational outreach, exhibits, and programs such as today's birthday celebration. In 2015, we will hold a GOP candidates debate, open offices in Washington, D.C., and provide millions of dollars in college scholarships to high school students who share the same character, values, and dedication to community as President Reagan did. But I would be remiss if I did not mention that we are here today to celebrate what President Reagan would have called the 65th anniversary of his 39th birthday. In 1984, after celebrating his birthday, President Reagan joked, quote, "I had what every man who has that many candles on his birthday cake needs around him, a large group of friends and a working sprinkler system." President Reagan, if he were here with us today, would be so touched and honored to see all the friends who have joined us at the Reagan Library to celebrate his birthday. To him, birthdays were about more than celebrating his own life. They were about celebrating life and laughter in the American spirit. and we are delighted to have all of you here to do just that. We are also honored today to have with us another friend of Ronald Reagan. He may not have ever helped the president blow out birthday candles or joined him for a ride at the ranch, but his service to our country and the president definitely qualifies him as a friend of the Reagan Library. Vice Admiral Michael Miller was commissioned at the Naval Academy in 1974 and most recently was a superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. He served on carrier deployments around the world, including combat operations against Libya, the Achille Lauro terrorist incident, and squadron command in the Persian Gulf during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He served on the USS John F. Kennedy, the USS Coronado, and the USS Blue Ridge. In 2000, he reported for duty as the Deputy Director of the White House Military Office and was commissioned as a Deputy Assistant to the President in 2002. And that's where our paths crossed. For it was this fine gentleman acting as President Bush's representative that flew aboard Air Force One 28,000 to escort President Reagan in June of 2004 to Washington, D.C. for his funeral services at the National Cathedral, and then back again to Point Mugu in Ventura for the interment ceremony here at the library. And for those of you here that day who remember the emotional gesture of Air Force One 28,000 tipping its wings as it flew over the Reagan Library, well, you can thank our special guest for his assistance in making that flyover happen. Our paths crossed again when Vice Admiral Miller assumed command of the Carrier Strike Group 7 and the USS Ronald Reagan in 2005. He led that strike group on its maiden deployment to the Persian Gulf and the Western Pacific in 2006. And then, in 2011, our paths crossed once more when he helped us celebrate President Reagan's centennial year by holding an academic symposium at the United States Naval Academy where we discussed President Reagan's Peace Through Strength initiatives with 5,000 midshipmen. We truly could not ask for a better speaker today, so please join me in giving a warm welcome to a hero and a friend of the Reagan Library, Admiral Mike Miller.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, sir.
Kind. You know, after such a kind introduction, you're always tempted just to say thank you very much and sit down. But it's such a pleasure to be here and see Michael again, Congressman, distinguished guests, so many friends from the area here to celebrate a remarkable life. John, it's such an honor to be here with you and to share the dais with the chaps and of course with General Banta. I knew General Banta when I was the superintendent at the Naval Academy. He was a military assistant to the Secretary of the Navy. And it's reassuring to me to see that the Marine Corps continues to pick its best and brightest to lead its youngest leathernecks as they train down there and get ready to deploy down in Camp Pendleton. You see them around here, and if this doesn't make you want to bust your buttons, I don't know what will. For Melissa and Joanne, who have made all of the arrangements here, and for so many other volunteers that are in the back here that make these sort of events look so simple. No one appreciates it more than I that this happens only with the extreme attention to detail that is so typical of the Reagan Library. I would like to think they kind of channel our 40th president. I'm trying to channel them with Boots. They're much more successful in their extraordinary hospitality. I think you view a day like today with a little bit of mixed emotions. There's on the one hand a tinge of sadness and reflecting on the fact that we don't have this remarkable communicator here to join us in this spectacular setting. But even in missing that wit and wisdom, there's so much pride and optimism when we consider all that President Reagan contributed during his many years of public service. So I choose today to see it as a celebration celebration of a life well lived, and a great optimist. We look on the president's birth in Tampico, Illinois here 104 years ago, and I think one of the quotes, Michael put it in his book, he said, we lived above a bank that was as close as we ever got to that much money. But those humble beginnings there built the quality of leadership that the nation so desperately needed, and it took years for us to actually see it come about. It's, I suppose, a little bit easy to forget all of the things that were accomplished under President Reagan, and he was so self-effacing. It's easy to see why. I mean, it was he who said, "There is no limit to what a man can do or where he can go, if he doesn't care who gets the credit." And those words are as true today as they were when he first spoke them. So you talk about limitless potential. There's a true living legacy. It was referred to a couple of times already. The USS Ronald Reagan, which I had the pleasure of serving on, aircraft carrier of magnificent proportions and incredible capability. The ship's motto is "Peace through Strength," a reflection of the president's foreign affairs and military philosophy. And being around it, you understand that the ship commands so much respect just by its namesake. When it pulls in, people pay attention. After 40 years of service, it's impossible for me to ignore all that President Reagan did specifically for the Navy and the Marine Corps in a very, very tangible way. As I graduated in 1974, we were just coming out, as the general referred to, we were coming out of a dark time in our nation's military. And I think about how difficult those days were, and many of you all in this audience served then, and remember that morale and discipline were perhaps at an all-time low. I noticed here just this past month that the last of the Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates are on deployment. Now that wouldn't necessarily mean much to you all. The USS Kaufman, named for Admiral Draper Kaufman, who's the first Navy frogman. That's the last deployment of those 51 ships in that class. When President Reagan, in his first year, decided he was going to start ramping up the Navy, he built 9 of those ships. Now, to give you a sense of proportionality, our entire budget this year will build a total of 7. President Reagan built 9 plus several other different classes of ships. And so you see this long legacy, this long blue line, if you will, that tracks its way back to the President's decision that we needed a world-class Navy, and we had to rebuild what we had. So he advocated for 600 ships, and it was 30 years ago in a commencement address at the Naval Academy, in fact. He reminded us that despite the costs of maintaining a Navy, which is mentioned in the Constitution, by the way, he said it's too costly for America not to be prepared. He firmly believed, and history has borne this out, that the best way to prevent war is to be prepared for it. In that same speech in Annapolis, he looked back at where the Navy was coming from, and I looked at the quote, and it just, for me, rings true to this very day. During the last decade, perhaps as a result of confusion stemming from the Vietnam War, America again permitted its military strength to decline. For the Navy, that meant going from almost 1,000 ships in the late 1960s to fewer than 500 by 1980. In real terms, our overall military spending dropped by 20% in the 1970s. And he was right, of course. And that resulted in this need to rebuild. At that time, when I was commissioned, we had race riots on some of our ships. We suffered from a lack of high-quality recruits as we were transitioning into the all-volunteer force. And the majority of our junior sailors and Marines qualified for food stamps. Thanks to President Reagan's visionary leadership, those days were about to end. Over his time in office, we peaked just shy of 600 ships, the highest total the Navy has seen since the 60s. His inherent optimism was stamped on every endeavor, and that certainly included shipbuilding. As he once said, there are no great limits to growth because there are no limits of human intelligence, imagination, and wonder. Wonder, what an optimistic way to characterize the American experience. So it was on this date, exactly 30 years ago, that the President laid out his vision for his second term in his State of the Union address, a vision that came to be known as the Reagan Doctrine. He said, "We must stand by our democratic allies, and we must not break faith with those who are risking their lives on every continent, from Afghanistan to Nicaragua, to defy Soviet, or perhaps today we would say externally supported aggression, and secure rights which have been ours from birth." Were he here today, I feel certain he would continue to advocate for a strong global presence in our foreign and military affairs, and most assuredly in a strong United States Navy and Marine Corps. While our numbers of ships have dwindled below 300, the quality of our vessels and the extraordinary talents of today's sailors and Marines make those ships incredibly powerful and, if need be, lethal. So while he certainly advocated a position of trust but verify, he was inherently an optimist. And he reflected that when he said, "You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. If we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us, we justified our brief moment here. We did all that could be done." An optimistic view. This contrast between darkness and light is a powerful one, and I was reminded of it when, as was mentioned, I was privileged and honored to be on Air Force One when we flew the President for his last trip back to Washington and then finally back here to the Valley. When we left Washington on that gray day in June of 2004, it was misty and it fit the melancholy mood of those of us that were out at Andrews Air Force Base to see the President one last time. And as we got the airplane ready to go, we took off, and we had talked with the crew and made the decision we were going to fly over Tampico, Illinois, even though the entire United States was covered with clouds. And as we worked our way west, the colonel flying the airplane said, "Well, we're just about there. Everybody should go and take a look out the window." And as we did, and it was always said, it never rained on Ronald Reagan. And as we looked down, I am not kidding you, there was a hole in the clouds just the size of that very small town, Tampico, Illinois, and you could see it clear as a bell. And if you were there in Tampico on that day, you looked up, you would see that robin egg blue, beautiful airplane flying straight overhead. The sun never set truly on President Ronald Reagan. So as I spend this glorious afternoon here with you all, I am just so pleased to think about how much more remains to be done to further the legacy of President Reagan. As he said, America's best days are yet to come. Our proudest moments are yet to be. Our most glorious achievements are just ahead. God bless you all, and God bless President Ronald Wilson Reagan.
Thank you so much, Admiral. Now, if you would, please rise for the laying of the wreath in honors to President Reagan. The President of the United States has directed that a presidential wreath be laid at the resting place of all former presidents on the anniversary of their birth. Brigadier General Edward Banta, Commanding Officer, Marine Corps Base, Camp Pendleton, California, is designated to place a wreath at the tomb of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan, on 6 February 2015, in honor of the 104th anniversary of his birth and in tribute to his distinguished service to a grateful nation. Please remain standing for the retiring of the colors. It's requested that you remain in place until the conclusion of the ceremony. Hoorah. This concludes our ceremony today. Thank you all for coming. Birthday cake will now be served inside the Presidential Learning Center. Thanks again so much for coming.